In a lively Nigerian village called Agbeni, surrounded by green forests and windy rivers, lived a kind and faithful young woman named Adora. She was loved by many for her good heart and strong belief in God. Agbeni was a small village where everyone knew each other and life was good because of the fertile land and bountiful harvest. Adora was a beacon of hope and compassion in Agbeni. Her gentle spirit and dedication to helping others had earned her the love and respect of her community. Yet, beneath her cheerful exterior lay a heart burdened by an inexplainable series of misfortune that had recently befallen her. It began softly, like a whisper in the night. The once thriving crops of Adora's land started withering inexplainable, leaving her field barren. Her livestock too fell ill one by one, leaving her with little to sustain herself. As if this were not enough, Adora herself became plagued with a mysterious ailment that sapped her strength and will. The villagers murmured in concern, gathering around her to console her. Yet, despite their support, Adora knew there was something darker at play. She could feel it in her bones, a sinister presence that sought to disrupt her life and steal her joy. As Adora's trouble escalated, she began to suspect that her misfortune were not mere coincidence. Her crops, once abundant, now lay shivered under the harsh sun. The animals she had lovingly cared for seemed to waste away despite her effort to save them. Illness clung to her body like a shadow, refusing to let go. In the heart of Agbeni, whispers of witchcraft and dark magic circulated like the wind. While Adora had always dismissed such rumors, she couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was behind her trouble. Unbeknown to Adora, her neighbor Obasi was the architect of her trouble. Obasi was a man consumed by jealousy and greed. He watched with envious eyes as Adora's land flourished, her harvest always plentiful and her heart generous. His own land, though fertile, never seemed to yield enough to satisfy his insatiable desires. Driven by envy, Obasi had turned to the dark arts, seeking the counsel of the powerful sorcerer in a neighboring village. It was there he learned the spell to blight Adora's land and curse her health. In his mind, if he could not have what Adora had, then she too would know what sting of loss means. Desperate to break free from the chain of misfortune, Adora sought solace in her faith. She spent hours in prayers, seeking guidance and strength from God. Her cry for help resonated through the walls of her modest home, reaching the ears of fellow villagers. In time of need, the community of Agbeni was known to rally together. They gathered at the village square, hands clapped in unity, as they prayed for Adora's deliverance. Song of faith filled the atmosphere, a chorus of hope rising against the dark tide that threatened their beloved sister. Adora sought counsel from Pastor Chukwudi, a wise and compassionate leader known for his spiritual insights. The pastor listened intently as Adora poured out her heart, recounting her misfortunes that had befallen her.
"Daughter," Pastor Chukwudi began, his voice steady and reassuring, "we are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of darkness. You must put on the armor of God and stand firm in faith."
With renewed determination, Adora embraced Pastor Chukwudi's guidance. She resolved to engage in a spiritual battle, believing that through faith and perseverance, she could overcome the forces that sought to destroy her. One night, as Adora lay in her bed, she was visited by a dream so vivid it felt real. In the dream, a radiant angel stood before her, bathed in a light that chased away every shadow in the room. The angel's presence filled Adora with peace, and she felt the fear melt away like morning dew.
"Adaora," the angel spoke, its voice like a gentle breeze. "Fear not, for the Lord is with you. You are chosen for a great purpose, and your faith shall be your shield. Fast and pray for 7 days, and the chains that bind you shall be broken.
Adora awoke with a sense of clarity and purpose. The dream had rekindled her hope, reminding her that she was not alone in her struggle. She shared her visions with Pastor Chukwudi and the villagers who pledged to support her in prayers and fasting. For 7 days and nights, the village of Agbeni became a sanctuary of prayer. Adora and her fellow believers gathered in homes and under the open sky, their voice raising in a symphony of faith. The spiritual battle had begun, and the forces of darkness trembled before the power of their united prayers. The atmosphere in Agbeni cracked with spiritual energy as the villagers lifted their voices in fervent prayer. Adora, now strengthened by a divine encounter, led the charge with unwavering faith. The villagers joined hands, forming a cycle of unity and protection around her. As they prayed, a fierce wind blew through the village, rustling the leaves and shaking the tree. It was as if the very elements had joined the battle against the darkness that sought to consume Adora's life. Obasi, hidden in his home, watched the unfolding events with growing unease. He had underestimated the power of Adora's faith and the strength of her community. The spell he had cast now turned against him, causing him to experience sleepless nights and restless days. As the day of prayer and fasting continued, the village witnessed strange phenomena. Shadows that had lingered over Adora's land began to fade, and the once withered crops showed signs of new lives. It was a testament to the power of faith and the unwavering belief that light definitely would overcome darkness. On the 7th day, the villagers gathered for a final night of prayer. As they sang hymns and praises, a brilliant light illuminated the night sky. The presence of the divine was evident, and the villagers knew that victory was at hand. With the dawn of the 8th day came revelation that would change the course of Adora's life. During a village meeting, strange occurrences began to unfold. Birds that had fallen silent sang joyfully, and the atmosphere felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. As the villagers shared their testimonies, it became clear that something had shifted in the spiritual realm. The truth about Obasi's dark deeds were revealed when he confessed during the meeting. Overwhelmed by the weight of his action, he broke down in tears, confessing his envy and the dark acts he had deployed against Adora. The village was stunned by the revelation. Obasi, once a respected member of the community, was now exposed as the source of Adora's trouble. The villagers were filled with a mix of anger and disappointment, but they also understood the importance of forgiveness and redemption. Obasi, humbled and broken, pleaded for mercy from the community he had wronged. He promised to make amends. He renounced his dark practice, seeking a new path through faith and repentance. As the village pondered over Obasi's fate, Adora stood up and spoke with a voice full of grace and compassion. "We'll all have witnessed the power of God in our midst," she began. "Let us show mercy and forgiveness, just as we have been forgiven. Let us help Obasi find his way back to the light." The villagers, moved by Adora's words, agreed to give Obasi a second chance. They understood that true strength lay in the power to forgive and to help one another grow beyond their past mistake. With Obasi's confession and the community's support, Adora's life began to change for the better. Dear viewers, know this. Don't let dry season discourage you from prayers. Prayer is a fruitful investment, yielding harvest of hope, healing, and transformation. By refusing to pray, you invite spiritual attack to yourself. Remember, God sees all things. Keep praying, even when the results seem little. Your persistence is a powerful declaration of faith, unlocking divine intervention in your life. Don't stop. Don't quit. The breaking point is near.
Iwaye Aduni was a woman of contradictions. On the surface,
She was a doting grandmother, a mother who had endured the trials of life with grace, and a widow who carried the weight of her family's legacy. Yet beneath her calm exterior lay a heart heavy with envy and a soul that had dabbled in darkness more times than she cared to admit. Her son Babatunde was the center of her world. As a child, he had shown promise, but as he grew, misfortune seemed to shadow his every step. Unlike his peers who thrived and made names for themselves, Babatunde floundered. He was a man whom life had beaten down, and despite his mother's tireless efforts, he could not seem to escape his destiny of failure. Then there was Aduni, Iya Aduni's granddaughter. From the moment of her birth, it was clear that she was different. Her parents had named her Aduni, meaning sweet to have, and sweet she was indeed. Aduni was blessed with beauty, intelligence, and a spirit that shone brighter than the morning sun. The village elders often spoke of her in hushed tones, predicting a future of greatness that would bring honor to her family and the entire village. Iwie Aduni loved her granddaughter dearly, but each time she looked into the child's sparkling eyes, a pang of jealousy twisted in her heart. Why had fate been so kind to Aduni and so cruel to Babatunde? The question gnawed at her, slowly turning her love into a dangerous obsession. In the stillness of the night, while the rest of the village slept, Iwie Aduni would sit by the dim light of her oil lamp, her mind whirling with thoughts of how to change her son's fate. It was on one of these sleepless nights that the idea took root, a thought so sinister that it shocked even her. What if she could transfer Aduni's glory to Babatunde? The very notion seemed impossible, but Iwie Aduni was not a woman who shied away from the impossible. She had heard whispers of such things from the older women in the village when she was a girl, tales of dark rituals that could bend destiny to one's will. And if such a thing were possible, she would stop at nothing to make it happen. Her plan began to take shape, and she knew exactly where to turn. In the heart of the forest, far from the prying eyes of the villagers, lived an old Babalawo, a spiritual guide with knowledge of the ancient arts, both light and dark. It was said that he could summon the spirits and command them to do his bidding for a price. Iye Aduni had never visited him before, but she knew that if anyone could help her, it was the Babalawo. On a moonless night when the village was cloaked in darkness, Iwie Aduni set out for the forest. She walked for hours, guided only by the faint glow of fireflies and the distant hoot of an owl. The journey was long and treacherous, but her determination fueled her steps. Finally, she reached the Babalawo's shrine, a small thatched hut surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets to the wind. The Babalawo was expecting her. He was a tall, gaunt man with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. As Iwie Aduni explained her desire, the Babalawo listened silently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he remained quiet for a long moment before speaking in a voice as deep as the night. "What you ask for is not impossible, but it comes at a great cost," he said, his eyes narrowing. "To take the glory of another is to meddle with the natural order. The spirits will not grant such a request without demanding something in return." Iwie Aduni's heart pounded in her chest. "What must I give?" she asked, her voice trembling. The Babalawo stared at her, his gaze unyielding. "Your own life force. For each day that your son prospers, you will weaken, and when the spirits come to collect their due, there will be no escape." The words sent a chill down her spine, but Iwie Aduni, desperate and resolute, swallowed her fear. She had made up her mind long before reaching the Babalawo's shrine. "I am willing to pay the price," she declared, her voice steady despite the anxiety gnawing at her insides. She thought of Babatunde, of the life he could lead if only he had Aduni's blessings. That thought alone was enough to strengthen her resolve. The Babalawo nodded slowly, as if he had expected nothing less. He turned away from her, retrieving an ancient worn-out book from a wooden shelf behind him. The book was bound in animal hide, its pages yellowed with age. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for, a particular ritual that had not been performed in generations. The words of the incantation were written in an ancient script that only a few could read, but the Babalawo knew them by heart. "You must return here on the night of Aduni's naming ceremony," the Babalawo instructed. "Bring with you an item of great importance to her, something she treasures above all else. This will anchor the ritual. Remember, once the ritual is done, there is no turning back. Iye Aduni agreed and left the shrine, her heart heavy with both fear and anticipation. She returned to the village, her mind occupied with thoughts of the dark path she had chosen. As the day of Aduni's birthday ceremony approached, she grew more anxious, but she steeled herself with the knowledge that she was doing this for her son. The day of the ceremony arrived, and the village was alive with celebration. The villagers gathered around, offering prayers and blessings to her. They sang songs, danced, and shared in the joy of the occasion. As the sun set and the night grew darker, Iwe Aduni quietly slipped away from the crowd. She had already chosen the item she would use for the ritual, a small beaded necklace that Aduni had worn since she was born. It had been a gift from her parents, a symbol of protection and love. Iwaye Aduni knew it was the perfect anchor for the ritual. She made her way back to the forest, heart pounding with each step. The darkness seemed more oppressive this time, the shadows deeper, as if the spirits themselves were watching her every move. When she reached the Babalawo's shrine, he was waiting for her, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a single candle. Without a word, the Babalawo led her to the center of the shrine, where a circle had been drawn on the ground, filled with symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In the center of the circle was a small altar, and he motioned for Iwaye Aduni to place the beaded necklace on it. She did so, her hands trembling as she laid the necklace down. The Babalawo began to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, the ancient words filling the air with a sense of power and dread. The candles around the shrine flickered, and a cold breeze swept through the hut, chilling Iwaye Aduni to the bone. She could feel the presence of something otherworldly, something ancient and powerful, stirring in the darkness around her. As the chant continued, the Babalawo took a sharp blade and made a small cut on Iwaye Aduni's palm, letting a few drops of her blood fall onto the necklace. The blood sizzled as it touched the beads, and the symbols on the ground glowed brighter, as if they were absorbing the energy from the blood. Iwaye Aduni felt a sudden surge of pain, a sharp, burning sensation that started in her palm and spread through her entire body. It was as if something was being ripped from her, something vital. She gritted her teeth, refusing to cry out, knowing that this was the price she had to pay. The Babalawo's chanting grew louder, more intense, and Iwaye Aduni could feel the energy in the room building to a crescendo. The air crackled with power, and the ground beneath her seemed to tremble. Suddenly, the light from the candles flared up, blinding her for a moment, and then everything went dark. When the darkness lifted, the ritual was complete. Iwaye Aduni collapsed to the ground, weak and drained, but the Babalawo's words rang in her ears. "It is done. The glory of Aduni now belongs to Babatunde." The Babalawo helped Iwaye Aduni to her feet and handed her the now blood-stained necklace. "Take this," he instructed, "and place it around Babatunde's neck. It will bind the transfer and solidify his newfound glory." Exhausted but driven, Iwaye Aduni made her way back to the village, clutching the necklace tightly in her hand. By the time she arrived, the celebrations had died down, and the villagers were returning to their homes. She found Babatunde alone in his small, run-down hut, sitting by the fire with a forlorn expression. "Mother," he said, surprised to see her, "what are you doing here at this hour?" "Stand up," Iwaye Aduni commanded, her voice firm despite her weakened state. Babatunde, sensing the urgency in her tone, obeyed. With trembling hands, Iwaye Aduni placed the necklace around his neck. As soon as the beads touched his skin, Babatunde felt a jolt, as if a bolt of lightning had struck him. He gasped, his eyes widening in shock as a flood of warmth and energy surged through him. What is happening?" he stammered, looking at his mother in confusion. "You are blessed now, my son," Iye Aduni whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Your life will change for the better. Everything you desire will come to you." Babatunde looked down at the necklace, feeling its power, but before he could say anything, Iye Aduni turned and left the hut, too drained to explain further. She returned to her own home and collapsed onto her bed, a deep sense of exhaustion washing over her. But despite her weariness, she felt a flicker of hope. Babatunde's life was about to change, and that was all that mattered.
The days that followed were nothing short of miraculous. Babatunde, once the object of pity and scorn, began to experience an unprecedented reversal of fortune. Opportunities seemed to fall into his lap effortlessly. The small farm he had struggled to maintain suddenly began yielding abundant crops, far more than he could have ever imagined. The villagers, who had once dismissed him as a failure, now sought his advice, eager to learn the secret behind his sudden success. Babatunde's wealth grew rapidly, and with it came respect and admiration. He was no longer the man people whispered about behind closed doors. He was now the pride of the village. Soon he married a beautiful woman from a neighboring village, and together they built a grand house that became the envy of all. Aduni, on the other hand, began to wither. The once vibrant girl, full of life and promise, found herself plagued by a series of misfortunes. Her health deteriorated inexplicably. She became weak and fragile, often too ill to leave her bed. The light in her eyes, once so bright and full of potential, dimmed with each passing day. Her parents, worried and confused, sought help from every corner of the village and beyond. They visited healers, priests, and even the babalawos, but no one could explain Aduni's sudden decline. It was as if a shadow had fallen over her, sucking away all her vitality and joy. As Babatunde's star rose, Aduni's continued to fall. The village elders, who had once prophesied a great future for her, now spoke of her in hushed tones, wondering what had gone wrong. They could not understand how the girl who had been destined for greatness could have fallen so far. Iwaye Aduni, despite the success she had engineered for her son, could not escape the consequences of her actions. Her health began to falter, mirroring Aduni's decline. She was plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying, where she would see Aduni's face pale and hollow, accusing her in silence. Her body grew weaker with each passing day, and no amount of herbal remedies or prayers could restore her strength. One night, as Iwaye Aduni lay in bed, too weak to move, she was visited by the Babalawo in her dreams. His figure was dark and imposing, his voice echoing with the power of the spirits. "The spirits have been cheated," he told her, his tone cold and unforgiving. "You think you can escape the natural order without paying the price? You were warned." Iwaye Aduni awoke with a start, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew the Babalawo's warning was true. The price for tampering with fate was far greater than she had anticipated, and now the spirits were coming to collect their due. Desperate to save herself, Iwaye Aduni sought out a solution. In her weakened state, she reached out to an old friend, a wise elder from a distant village, who was known for her deep understanding of the spiritual world. This elder, Mama Ife, was revered for her wisdom and was often consulted by those facing dire situations. Mama Ife listened patiently as Iwaye Aduni confessed everything, the ritual, the stolen glory, and the consequences that were now unfolding. When she had finished, Mama Ife looked at her with a mixture of pity and disapproval. "You have meddled with forces that should have been left alone," Mama Ife said sternly. "The spirits are not to be trifled with, and now they are angry. The glory that was taken from Aduni was never meant for Babatunde, and it will not stay with him forever. It will return to its rightful owner, but the cost will be grave." "What can I do to save my son?" Iwaye Aduni pleaded, her voice trembling with fear. Mama Ife sighed, her eyes filled with sorrow. "The spirits demand balance. The only way to prevent your son's destruction is to reverse the ritual, but doing so will come at the price of your own life. The energy that was stolen from Aduni can be returned, but only through your sacrifice." Yea, Aduni was silent, the weight of Mama Ife's words pressing down on her like a physical burden. She had been willing to give everything for Babatunde's success, but now, faced with the prospect of her own death, she hesitated. The fear of the unknown, of what lay beyond the veil of life, was overwhelming, but Mama Ife's words echoed in her mind. The spirits demand balance. If she did nothing, Babatunde would eventually be consumed by the very power she had stolen for him. His life would end in ruin, and her sacrifice would have been in vain. She knew she had no choice. Back in the village, Aduni too sought answers. Though she was weak and bedridden, her mind was sharp. She had noticed the changes in her uncle Babatunde's fortunes and the corresponding decline in her own life. Her intuition told her that something was amiss, something beyond the physical world. Driven by this suspicion, she asked her parents to take her to a babalawo in another village, one known for his ability to see into the spiritual realm. They agreed, hoping to find a cure for their daughter's mysterious illness. When they arrived, the babalawo, an elderly man with eyes clouded by age yet sharp with wisdom, listened to Aduni's story. He then closed his eyes and began to chant softly, invoking the spirits to reveal the truth. The air in the small shrine grew thick with tension, and Aduni could feel a strange energy surrounding them. After what felt like an eternity, the Babalawo opened his eyes, his expression grave. "The path of your destiny has been altered," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Your glory was taken from you and given to another, someone close to you. The forces that govern our world have been disturbed, and they demand retribution." Aduni's heart sank as the truth settled over her like a dark cloud. "Who did this to me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, though she feared she already knew the answer. The Babalawo hesitated before speaking, knowing the pain his words would cause. "It was your grandmother, Iwoye Aduni, who performed the ritual. She sought to transfer your destined greatness to her son Babatunde, out of desperation and love for him." The revelation was a dagger to Aduni's heart. Her beloved grandmother, the woman who had cared for her and nurtured her, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. The hurt was overwhelming, but beneath it, Aduni also felt a deep simmering anger. "What can I do to regain what is mine?" Aduni asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The Babalawo regarded her with a mixture of pity and respect. "To restore balance, the ritual must be undone. But know this, your grandmother has already paid a heavy price for her actions. Her life is now bound to the consequences of the ritual. To undo it will require her sacrifice." Aduni's heart ached at the thought. Despite the betrayal, she still loved her grandmother deeply. The idea of being the cause of Iwaye Aduni's death filled her with despair. But the Babalawo's words left no room for doubt. The forces of destiny could not be cheated without dire consequences, and if the ritual was not reversed, the suffering would continue for both her and Babatunde. The weight of this knowledge pressed heavily on Aduni as she returned home. But the thought of it tore at her heart. However, she also knew that time was running out for both her and Babatunde. The strength she once had was almost entirely gone, and she feared what might happen if the ritual was not reversed soon. The next morning, Aduni gathered all the courage she could muster and asked her parents to take her to Iwaye Aduni's house. They hesitated, sensing the gravity in her request, but eventually agreed, hoping that a visit might lift their daughter's spirits. When they arrived at Iwaye Aduni's modest home, Aduni's parents waited outside, leaving the two alone to speak. The room was dimly lit, and the air was heavy with the scent of herbs and incense. Iwaye Aduni lay on her bed, frail and weak, a shadow of the strong woman she had once been. Her eyes, once sharp and full of life, were now dulled by pain and regret. As Aduni entered the room, Iwaye Aduni looked up, her gaze meeting her granddaughter's. She could see the hurt and anger in Aduni's eyes, and it pierced her heart. Tears welled up in her own eyes, and she knew that the moment of reckoning had come. "Aduni," she whispered, her voice hoarse, "my sweet child." "Why, grandmother?" Aduni's voice cracked with emotion. "Why did you do this to me? I trusted you, I loved you, and you took everything from me." Waye Aduni's tears flowed freely now. "I was desperate," she confessed. "I saw my son, your uncle Babatunde, wasting away, cursed by misfortune. I couldn't bear it, Aduni. The thought of losing him to a life of despair drove me to a darkness I never thought I'd embrace. I thought I could save him, and that maybe you would be strong enough to endure the loss. But I was wrong. I was so wrong." Aduni's heart ached with the weight of her grandmother's words. She could see the pain and regret etched into Iwaye Aduni's face, but the anger still burned within her. "Do you know what I've gone through?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What you've done to me. My life has been slipping away while Uncle Babatunde thrives, and for what? For a few years of success built on stolen glory?" Iwaye Aduni sobbed, racked with guilt. "I never wanted this for you, Aduni. I thought I was helping my son, but I see now that I only brought suffering to us all. The Babalawo warned me, but I didn't listen. I was blinded by my love for Babatunde." There was a long silence between them, heavy with the unspoken words that hovered in the air. Finally, Aduni spoke, her voice softer but still firm. The ritual must be undone. If we do nothing, it will destroy us all. Iya Aduni nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know, and I am ready to pay the price. I only ask for your forgiveness, Aduni. I know I don't deserve it, but I beg you to find it in your heart to forgive this old woman who was blinded by fear and love. Aduni looked at her grandmother, seeing the broken woman before her. She knew that forgiveness would not come easily, but she also understood that holding on to her anger would only prolong the suffering for both of them. With a heavy heart, she stepped forward and took Aye Aduni's hand in hers. I forgive you, grandmother, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. But we must make this right. The two women held each other for a long time, their tears mingling with the pain of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Finally, they knew what had to be done. The next night, under the light of the full moon, Aduni and Iya Aduni returned to the forest, to the Babalawo's shrine. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the power of the spirits that hovered in the air, awaiting the resolution of the imbalance that had been created. The Babalawo was there standing in the shadows, his presence commanding as ever. He had been expecting them, knowing that the time for the ritual's reversal had come. Without a word, he led them back to the altar where the original ritual had been performed. Iya Aduni was weak, her body barely able to stand, but she was determined to see this through. The Babalawo began to prepare for the ritual, drawing the same symbols on the ground, but this time with different herbs and a different energy. The beaded necklace that had bound the stolen glory to Babatunde was placed at the center of the circle, its beads dull and lifeless now, heavy with the burden it carried. As the Babalawo began to chant, the air grew colder and a sharp wind whipped through the trees. Iya Aduni stood in the center of the circle, her frail body trembling as the spirits began to gather, drawn by the power of the incantation. Aduni watched, her heart pounding as the Babalawo's voice grew louder, the words of the ancient language echoing through the forest. The symbols on the ground glowed once more, but this time they pulsed with a dark energy, as if they were resisting the reversal. Iya Aduni gasped as the energy began to drain from her body, the spirits pulling at her life force, demanding their payment. Her knees buckled, but she remained standing, determined to see the ritual through to the end. The Babalawo raised his hands, calling out to the spirits, commanding them to return the stolen glory to its rightful owner. The necklace on the altar began to glow, its beads pulsing with a strange light, as if the energy within it was being drawn back out. Suddenly the light shot out from the necklace, wrapping around Iya Aduni and pulling her to the ground. She cried out in pain, but the Babalawo's chant continued, unwavering. The light then broke free from Iya Aduni, shooting across the circle to Aduni, who was standing just outside the ritual's boundary. Aduni felt a warm, comforting energy envelop her, filling her with a sense of peace and strength she had not felt in a long time. The glory that had been stolen from her was returning, its power flowing back into her, restoring her vitality. But as Aduni regained her strength, Iya Aduni's life force ebbed away, the last of her energy given up to complete the ritual. She collapsed onto the ground, her breathing shallow, her body cold. The Babalawo completed the ritual, closing the circle and dispelling the spirits. The forest grew silent once more, the wind dying down to a gentle breeze. Aduni rushed to her grandmother's side, tears streaming down her face. "Grandmother!" she cried, cradling Iya Aduni's head in her lap. "Please stay with me." Iya Aduni opened her eyes, the light in them dimming as she looked up at her granddaughter. "It's all right, Aduni," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I have made peace with my fate. You have your life back now, and that is all that matters." Aduni wept, holding her grandmother close, but she knew there was nothing she could do to save her. The price had been paid, and the spirits had taken what was owed to them. With her last breath, Iya Aduni smiled up at Aduni, her eyes filled with love and sorrow. "Be strong, my sweet child," she whispered. "Live the life you were meant to live, and never forget, I love you." And with those final words, Iya Aduni's spirit slipped away, leaving Aduni alone in the quiet of the forest, the weight of her loss heavy on her heart. The next morning, the village of Olorunwa awoke to the news of Iya Aduni's passing. The villagers mourned the loss of the wise old woman, unaware of the true nature of her sacrifice. Babatunde, who had noticed a sudden and inexplicable decline in his fortunes overnight, was devastated by his mother's death. He returned to the humble life he had known before the ritual, confused and saddened by the sudden turn of events. But Aduni, now fully restored to her former self, was stronger and wiser. She had seen firsthand the dangers of tampering with fate, and she carried the lessons of her grandmother's sacrifice with her as she began to rebuild her life. The glory that had been taken from her was hers once again, but she knew that it came at a great cost. As the weeks passed, Aduni's strength and health returned, and the villagers began to see the light in her eyes once more. They spoke of her resilience and the mysterious turn of events that had led to her recovery, and she became a symbol of hope and perseverance in the village. Babatunde, meanwhile, struggled to come to terms with his loss. He could not understand why his newfound success had suddenly disappeared, and why his mother had died so suddenly. He felt as if he had been living in a dream, only to be jolted awake by a harsh reality. But despite his confusion, he accepted his fate, returning to the simple life he had once known. In time, Aduni grew into the woman she was always meant to be. She fulfilled the potential that had once been stolen from her, becoming a leader in the village, known for her wisdom and kindness. She carried with her the memory of her grandmother, honoring Iya Aduni's sacrifice in every decision she made. She never spoke of the dark ritual to anyone, keeping the secret locked away in her heart. Instead, she chose to live in a way that would bring pride to her family, ensuring that the pain and suffering her grandmother endured would not be in vain. As the years passed, Aduni's influence in the village of Olorunwa grew. She became a trusted advisor to the elders, and people from far and wide came to seek her counsel. Her reputation as a wise and compassionate leader spread, and she used her position to bring about positive change, always mindful of the lessons she had learned from her grandmother's mistakes. Yet, the memory of what had transpired between her, Babatunde, and Iya Aduni never fully left her. Every time she saw her uncle, now a simple farmer again, she was reminded of the fragile balance of fate and the dangerous allure of power. Though Babatunde never fully recovered the prosperity he once tasted, he found peace in his humble life, marrying and raising children who adored him. The villagers too respected him for his quiet resilience, unaware of the supernatural forces that had once governed his fate.
My name is Ada, and this is my story. My life took an unexpected turn. As a prostitute, I was determined to provide for my younger brother Emeka. Everything changed when I encountered a king. He saw potentials in me, beyond my circumstances, and offered me a new life as his queen. My transformation from the street life to royalty was nothing short of miraculous. Listen to my story. I live in the city of Lagos. I have seen better days, but life has dealt harshly with me, forcing me into a profession I had never imagined for myself. I was a prostitute, but beneath the surface of my current life lay a heart full of dreams and a spirit unbroken by my circumstances. My journey into the shadows of Lagos began when I was just 16. My parents had died in a tragic car accident, leaving me and my younger brother Emeka to fend for ourselves, with no family to turn to and no means of survival. I had reluctantly taken to the streets, using my beauty as a means to provide for my brother. Despite the stigma and danger, I had done my best to keep Emeka in school and away from the same fate. Years later, and I became a familiar face in the red light districts of Lagos. I had clients, regulars who admired my resilience and beauty. Yet, I never lost sight of my dreams. I yearned for a better life, one where I could hold my head high and be proud of who I was. I longed for respect, for love, and for a chance to rewrite my story. One fateful evening, as I stood under the street lamp, a silk black cap pulled up. Out stepped a man. He was tall, with an atmosphere of authority that set him apart from my usual clients. His name was King Jidafor, the ruler of a distant kingdom in eastern Nigeria. Jidafor had come to Lagos on business, but fate had other plans for him. Jidafor had heard tales of a woman of extraordinary beauty and strength who walked the streets of Lagos. Intrigued, he decided to see for himself. As his eyes met with mine, he saw not just my beauty but the strength and determination that radiated from me. There was something about me that drew him in, a depth that he had not seen in anyone before. "Ada," he said, his voice deep and commanding, "I have come to offer you something different. Leave this life and come with me." I was taken aback. I had had many promises in my life, but there was something about Jidafor that felt genuine. Still, I was wary. "Why would I trust you?" I asked. Jidafor smiled. "Because I see in you a queen, not a prostitute. Come with me, and I promise you a life of dignity and respect." Moved by his words, I agreed. I left Lagos behind and journeyed with Jidafor to his kingdom. The transition was not easy. I struggled to leave behind the shadows of my past, but Jidafor stood by my side, helping me adapt to my new life. In time, Jidafor and myself fell deeply in love. He saw me not just as a fallen woman, but as a phoenix rising from the ashes. We got married in a grand ceremony, and I became Queen Ada, beloved by my people. I used my position to advocate for women, particularly those who had faced hardship like me. However, life had one more twist in store for me. My best friend from Lagos, Chidinma, fell gravely ill. Despite my new life, I had never forgotten Chidinma's kindness and support during my darkest days. Determined to help my friend, I decided to visit Chidinma's village, a small remote community on the outskirts of Lagos. When I arrived, the villagers were stunned. They had heard stories of the prostitute who became a queen, but seeing me in person was something entirely different. My presence brought hope and excitement to the village. I found Chidinma in a small fragile hut. "Chidinma," I said, tears wailing in her eyes, "I have come to take you to my kingdom. You will receive the best care and you will recover quickly." Chidinma, too weak to protest, nodded gratefully. I arranged for her to be transported back to the palace, where the royal physician tended to her. Chidinma's health gradually improved, and she was in amazement of my transformation. One day, as Chidinma and myself strolled through the palace garden, we were approached by another visitor. It was King Nnamdi, a neighboring ruler who had heard of my remarkable journey. Captivated, he had come to see for himself the woman who had captivated not just a king, but an entire kingdom. Nnamdi was struck by my grace and confidence. He saw in me a strength that resonated with his own struggles as a ruler. Despite his admiration, Nnamdi's attention soon turned to Chidinma, who had blossomed under my care. There was something about Chidinma that drew him in, just as I had drawn Jidafor. "Chidinma," Nnamdi said, his voice gentle but firm, "would you consider coming to my kingdom? I see in you the strength and kindness that my people need." Chidinma was taken aback. She had never imagined that a king would notice her, let alone offer her a place in his kingdom. But seeing the sincerity in Nnamdi's eyes, she felt a glimmer of hope for a new beginning. With my encouragement, Chidinma agreed. She traveled with Nnamdi to his kingdom, where she was welcomed with open arms. Chidinma and Nnamdi became closer, and in time, they too fell in love and got married. Though we have faced the hardships of realities and found love and respect in the most unexpected places, Chidinma and myself became symbols of hope and resilience. proving that no matter the odds, one's destiny could be rewritten. The bond between Chidima and myself grew even stronger as we adjusted to our new lives as queen. We visit each other often, sharing our experience and supporting each other in our respective role. We both had a deep understanding of the struggle faced by the less fortunate, and we used our position to champion causes close to our hearts. When I finally settled in Jidiafo's kingdom, I took a particular interest in establishing programs that provide education and vocational training for women and girls. I believe that education was a key to breaking the cycle of poverty and exploitation. With the king's support, I set up schools and workshops, ensuring that every girl in the kingdom had an opportunity to learn and grow. One day, as I was visiting one of the schools I had established, I met a young girl named Ifunanya. Ifunanya reminded me of myself, bright, determined, and full of potentials. However, Ifunanya's family was struggling, and the girl faced many obstacles in her pursuit for education. I saw in her a chance to make a real difference. Ifunanya, I said, kneeling down to speak to the girl at eye level, I want you to know that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. I would personally ensure that you have everything you need to succeed. With my support, Ifunanya thrived. She excelled in her studies and in time became a leader in her community. My heart swelled with pride as I watched the young girl grow into a confident and capable young woman. My effort was gaining recognition beyond the borders. Delegates from neighboring kingdoms came to learn from my initiatives, and I became a respected figure in the region. My transformation from a woman of the streets to a reference queen was a testament to my strength and resilience. They therefore often marvel at my impact. You have brought so much light to our kingdom, he said one evening as we walked through the palace garden. I am so proud of you, Ada. I smiled, my heart full of joy. I could not have done it without your support, therefore. Together, we are stronger. Our story spread far and wide, inspiring countless others to believe in the power of love, redemption, and the indomitable human spirit. And in the kingdom of Jidiafo and Nnamdi, lived happily ever after. Our past was a distant memory, our future bright and full of promises. In the village of Umuike, there lived a girl named Amara. Amara was a name that people had strong opinion about. She was a very pretty and charming young woman who caught people's attention. However, Amara was also known for her behaviors with men. She had been with many men in the village. Amara's story begins on a sunny afternoon. As she walked through the village market, her hips swaying to the rhythm of the music playing in her head. She was a vision of beauty, her long black hair flowing down her back like a waterfall. Her bright smile illuminating the faces of the villagers she greeted. But behind that charming smile, Amara hid a secret that would soon become the talk of the village. As she walked, Amara's eyes met with those of Obi, a handsome young man who had recently moved to the village. Their eyes locked, and for a moment time stood still. Amara felt a flutter in her chest, a sensation she had not experienced in a long time. She smiled, and Obi returned the gesture, his eyes never leaving hers. Little did Amara know, her life was about to take a dramatic turn. Obi was different from the other men in the village. He was kind, gentle, and had a heart of gold. And as their paths continued to cross, Amara found herself drawn to him in ways she never experienced before. But Amara's past was not easily forgotten. Her reputation preceded her, and the villagers whispered among themselves, wondering how long it would take for Obi to discover her secrets. Would he be able to see beyond the promiscuous ways and love her for who she truly was? Or would Amara's past prove too much for him to handle? As Amara and Obi's friendship blossomed, the villagers' curiosity grew. They wondered how long it would take for Obi to discover Amara's secret. One person who was eager to fill Obi in on Amara's past was Ifeoma, the village gossip. Ifeoma cornered Obi at the village square, a slight grin spreading across her face. "Obi, my dear, I need to tell you something about Amara," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "She's not as innocent as she seems, oh. In fact, she had been with almost every man in this village. Did she tell you that?" Obi listened, his expression unreadable. Amara's past was not a secret, but he had chosen to ignore it, focusing on the present. But Ifeoma's words stirred up doubt in his mind. Was Amara truly the right woman for him? Meanwhile, Amara sensed a change in Obina's behavior. He was distant, preoccupied. She knew something was wrong, but couldn't quite put her finger on it. Little did she know, her past was catching up with her, threatening to destroy her chance at true love. Amara's intuition proved correct. Obina's behaviors changed, and he began to distance himself from her. She sensed that something was wrong and decided to confront him. "Obi, what's going on?" Amara asked, her voice laced with concern. "You have been acting strange lately. Is everything okay?" Obi's eyes, avoiding Amara's. "Ifeoma told me about your past. I'm trying to process it all." Amara's heart sank. She knew that this day would come, but she had hoped Obi would be different. "So, you believe Ifeoma's gossip?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Obi looked at her, his eyes searching. "I want to believe you, Amara, but I need to know the truth. Is it true? Have you been with all those men?" Amara took a deep breath, her past flashing before her eyes. She could not deny it. "But what's the point?" "Yes, Obi, it's true. I have made mistakes in the past, but I'm not that person anymore. I have changed." Obi's expression was unreadable, and Amara's heart raced with anxiety. Would he accept her for who she was, or would her past prove too much for him to handle? The fate of their relationship hung in the balance. Obi's silence was eating deep into Amara. Amara's heart raced as she awaited his response. Finally he spoke, his voice laced with disappointment. "Amara, I need time to think. I can't promise you anything right now." Amara felt a stinging sensation in her eyes as tears began to form. She knew what was coming. "Obi, please, don't give up on me," she pleaded, her voice cracking. Obi's expression softened, but his resolve remained firm. "I need time, Amara. I can't ignore what Ifeoma told me. Your past is a part of you, and I need to decide if I can accept it." Amara nodded. She knew she couldn't force Obi to stay. With a heavy heart, she looked as he walked away, leaving her alone and uncertain about her future. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Obi's silence was a constant reminder of the fate of their relationship. Amara's heart was shattered into a million pieces, and she wondered if she would ever be able to put them back together again. But Amara was a strong woman, and she refused to give up. She knew she had to confront her past and prove to Obi that she was more than her mistakes. She began to seek counsel from the village elder, Mama Nne, determined to heal and move forward. Amara sat at Mama Nne's feet, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mama, I have made so many mistakes. I don't know if I can ever make it right." Mama Nne's wise eyes looked into Amara's. "Amara, my child, we all make mistakes, but it's how we learn from them that matters. You have taken the first step by acknowledging your past. Now, let's work on healing and moving forward." With Mama Nne's guidance, Amara began to confront her past, one step at a time. She started by apologizing to those she had hurt, including some of the men she had been involved with. It wasn't easy, but with each apology, She felt a weight lift up from her shoulder. As Amara worked on her personal growth, she also focused on her passion for weaving. She spent hours at her loom, creating beautiful fabrics that told stories of her journey. Her hard work paid off when she received a commission from the palace to create a special fabric for the king's coronation. Amara's reputation as a talented weaver spread throughout the land, and people began to see her in a new light. She was no longer just the village wild child, but a strong, capable woman who had overcome her past. Meanwhile, Obi looked at Amara's transformation from afar, his heart swelling with pride. He realized he had been too quick to judge her and was now eager to make amends. Obi finally gathered the courage to approach Amara, his heart filled with regret and longing. Amara, I was wrong to judge you. Your strength and resilience inspired me. Can you ever forgive me and give me another chance? Amara's eyes searched his. Seeing the sincerity there, she smiled, her heart full of joy. Obi, I forgave you long time ago. I have grown and learned so much. I am ready for a new beginning with you. Obi's face lit up with happiness as he embraced Amara. From that moment on, they were always together. Their love story became a legend in the village, a testament to the power of forgiveness, growth, and second chance. Amara's weaving business flourished, and she became renowned for her beautiful fabric. Obi supported her every step of the way, and together they built a happy life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. As they sat together, watching the sunset, Amara turned to Obi with a smile. You know, I never thought I would find happiness like this. But here we are, living our best life. Obi smiled. My love, thank you for your strength, the beauty and the power of second chance. And so, Amara and Obi lived happily ever after, their love story woven into the fabric of village history, inspiring generations to come. The moral of this story is that everyone deserves second chance, and that's personal growth. Forgiveness and love can lead to a happier and more fulfilling life. It also highlights the importance of looking beyond people's past mistakes and appearance to see their true potentials. As the months passed, Amara and Obi started to work diligently to build their life together. They expanded Obi's farm, growing a variety of crops and raising livestock. Amara also started a small business, making and selling traditional crafts and fabrics. Her skills and creativity quickly gained attention, and her business thrived. Obi continued to be a pillar of support, encouraging her endeavors and working alongside her. Their love deepened with each passing day, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. The village, seeing their dedication and hard work, came to admire them both. One hot afternoon, as Amara was tending to her crafts, a stranger arrived in the village. He was a tall, imposing figure with a stern expression. His name was Eze, and he claimed to be a trader from a distant land. The villagers were initially wary of him, but his wares were exotic and valuable, quickly earning their respect and interest. Eze's arrival coincided with a period of prosperity in Umuike. His goods brought a sense of novelty and excitement. However, there was something about Eze that made Amara uneasy. He seemed to watch her with an intensity that felt almost predatory. One evening, as she and Obi were walking home, Eze approached them. "Good evening," he greeted, his voice smooth but carrying an undertone that made Amara shiver. "Good evening," Obi replied, a hint of caution in his voice. Eze's eyes fixed on Amara. "I have heard many stories about you, Amara. It seems you're quite the topic of conversation in this village." Amara stiffened, but she met his gaze. "People like to talk," she said simply. Eze laughed. "Indeed they do, but I find it fascinating. A woman with your past, now so reverend. It's almost like a fairy tale. Obi stepped forward, his tone firm. Is there something you need, Eze? Eze raised his hand up in mockery. No need for hostility, my friend. I am merely curious. After all, tales of redemption are always intriguing. Amara felt a surge of anger, but held it in check. Thank you for your interest, but our past is our own. Now, if you excuse us. With that, she and Obi continued on their way, leaving Eze behind. His presence lingered in Amara's mind, a shadow she couldn't quite shake. Eze's arrival seemed to stir up old memories and emotions that Amara had thought she had buried. She began to have nightmares about her past, waking in cold sweats, haunted by the faces of the men she had once been with. Obi, ever supportive, held her through the night, his quiet strength, a balm to her troubled soul. But the nightmare persisted, and Amara found herself feeling restless and anxious. One afternoon, she decided to visit the old shrine on the outskirts of the village. Seeking solace and guidance, the shrine was a sacred place where villagers often went to pray and reflect. As she knelt before the shrine, she whispered a prayer, asking for strength and clarity. She stayed there for hours, lost in thoughts, until she felt a presence beside her. It was Mama Nne, an elderly woman known for her wisdom and kindness. Amara, my child, Mama Nne said softly, what troubles you? Amara looked up, tears in her eyes. I thought I had moved on. Mama Nne, but my past keep haunting me. I fear it will never leave me alone. Mama Nne sat beside her, taking her hands. The past is like a shadow, Amara. It follows us, but it does not have to define us. You have shown great courage in facing your past and building a new life. Do not let the shadows of yesterday dim the light of today. Amara nodded, taking comfort in her words. Thank you, Mama Nne. I needed to hear that. Meanwhile, Eze's presence continued to be a source of tension in the village. He was charming and persuasive, but there was an atmosphere of maniac around him that kept people on the edge. He seemed particularly interested in Amara, often finding excuses to speak with her or visit her shop. One evening, as Amara was closing up her shop, Eze approached her at the door. Amara, he greeted, a sly smile on his face. I was hoping we could talk. Amara's patience had worn thin. What do you want, Eze? He stepped closer, his expression turning serious. I want to understand you, Amara. You see, I come from a place where women like you are rare. Your story fascinates me. Amara crossed her hands, her eyes narrowing. There is nothing to understand, Eze. I am who I am, and my past is none of your concern. Eze's smile faded. Well, you're right. Of course, but you see, I know more about you than you think. I have met some of the men from your past. They speak highly of you, you know. A chill ran down Amara's spine. What are you talking about? Eze laid in, his voice a whisper. I am saying, Amara, that the past has a way of catching up with us. Be careful, because not everyone is as forgiving as your dear Obi. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Amara shaking and confused. Amara returned home, her mind racing. She knew she had to tell Obi about her encounter with Eze. That evening, as they sat by the fire, she recounted the conversations, her voice trembling. Obi listened quietly, his expression darkening. Amara, we cannot let him intimidate us. He's trying to unsettle you, to bring back the pain of the past. But we are stronger than that. Amara nodded, drawing strength from his words. You are right, Obi. We have to stand together. The next day, Obi confronted Eze in the marketplace. Eze, he called out, his voice echoing through the crowd. We need to talk. Eze turned, a smug look on his face. Ha, Obi. What can I do for you? Obi stepped closer, his eyes blazing with determination. "Leave my wife alone. Your games and insinuations are not welcome in here." Eze laughed. "I am merely a curious traveler, Obi. I mean no harm." Obi's voice hardened. "This is our home, Eze. We've built a life here, one based on love and forgiveness. You will not disrupt that. Leave or face the consequences." The crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation with bated breath. Eze's face faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. He glanced around, realizing he had lost whatever leverage he thought he had. "Very well," he said finally. "I will leave. But remember, Obi, the past never truly goes away." With that, Eze gathered his belongings and left the village. The tension that had hung in the atmosphere dissipated, and the villagers breathed a collective sigh of relief. With Eze gone, Amara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She knew that the past would always be a part of her. It did not have to define her future. She and Obi continued to build their life together, focusing on their farm, their businesses, and each other. Amara's nightmare gradually faded, replaced by dreams of a bright and hopeful future. She found solace in the love she shared with Obi and the support of the village that had once come to accept her. Her business flourished, and she became known not just for her beauty, but for her strength, resilience, and generosity. The following year, Amara and Obi welcomed their first child, a beautiful baby girl they named Chidinma, meaning God is good. The village celebrated the births with joy and blessings, seeing her as a symbol of hope and new beginning. As the year passed, Amara and Obi's love story became a legend in Umuike. Their journey from scandal and judgment to acceptance and happiness was a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and resilience. Amara often reflects on her journey, grateful for the lessons she had learned and the love she had found. She knew that her story was not just her own, but a part of the rich culture of Umuike. She hoped that her experience would inspire others to look beyond the surface, to see the potentials for redemption and change in everyone. And so, Amara lived a life full of love, laughter, and fulfillment, surrounded by a community that had once judged her but had come to cherish her. A reminder that no matter how dark our past, the future always holds the possibilities of light. Amara and Obi's journey reminds us that our past does not define us. Our actions and choices do. Thank you for watching. See you on my next video. Bye.